Right guys, today we're going to be comparing FDM versus Resin printers and we're going to be finding out which one is best for your needs. So to understand which printer is best for you, we need to know the differences between the two different types. So FDM printers use a spool of plastic filament that feeds through a hot end, and the hot end works much like a CNC machine where it traces round the profile of your print, leaving a thin layer of plastic each time. A resin printer uses UV resin, and underneath there's a screen. That screen emits UV light and sets each layer of the resin. Resin printers can achieve a lot more accuracy and detail at the cost of, cost. You can get a lot more for your money in terms of print volume with an FDM printer over a resin printer. The cheapest resin can be from £20 and it goes all the way up to hundreds of pounds for specialist types. When buying your printer, you should consider two different things: the temperature of the room it's going to be in and what room it's going to be in. For example, a resin printer emits noxious fumes that are quite toxic, so you want that in a room that's well ventilated and low traffic. The temperature part of it is the temperature of the resin needs between 25 and 35 degrees Celsius for optimal performance, though there are some ways to get around this. Conversely, FDM printers need to be in a low moisture environment because the filament absorbs moisture and it can degrade quite quickly in a short space of time if it's in a high moisture environment. So the biggest consideration when you're choosing your printer is what you're actually going to use it for. If you're interested in making small miniature models for Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, then resin is definitely the way to go, as it has just unparalleled detail in comparison to FDM. There's no layer lines. It can do them fine details much better. If you're using it for other things, such as making tools, toys, larger toys, then FDM is the way to go because it can do them at a much cheaper cost to you, and usually you can get much more varied materials with it. And that's not to say resin doesn't have specialised materials you can use for that, but there's such a broad spectrum of filaments you can use and ways to use them with FDM. If you're just prototyping parts, for instance, FDM is a cheap and efficient way of doing so. If they need to be detailed prototype parts, then resin may be the way to go, but the cost factor goes up exponentially when you need the more advanced materials you can use with it. So I'm going to show you some examples of a resin print and an FDM print, just so you can get a visualization of what I mean. So here we have a resin print on this side and an FDM print on this side. Now, as you can see, the FDM print, it still maintains decent detail, but there is layer lines visible even on the smooth surfaces, whereas the resin print, all the surfaces that are flat are smooth, and it's maintained that detail far better. So now we're going to break down the cost between the two types of printers. So we'll start with the resin printer. Now you can get a resin printer for as little as £100, which is quite a small printer, but it'll still print nice detailed prints nonetheless. My recommendation would be something like this Anycubic Photon 102, which is a 4K printer with a 6.6 inch build plate, which will get you 99% of all the prints you want to do with it. But with resin, there's an additional cost. On top of the actual resin you're buying, you have to be able to wash it. And depending on the type of resin, you've got to either use isopropyl alcohol or water. Now, neither of these can just be poured down the drain, as they're now toxic chemicals after the wash. So you need to think about how you're going to dispose of that. One option to clean your prints is a wash and cure station, such as this. This is more on the expensive side, but they all work the same, where you have a big bucket, it washes it, you let it dry, and then you move it over to the cure station, which is the final cure on the resin. So for FDM printers, have a higher upfront cost for a really good one, but then you have no additional cost in cleaning your prints. So for instance, this Anycubic Cobra 2 is £199. When you compare that to the £169 of the resin printer, you think, oh, I'll get the resin printer. But then you have to consider that you have to be able to dispose of the liquid and also have some way of washing and curing it. With FDM printers, it's simple as snapping off any supports you might have, recycling them, and then your print's ready. No washing required. So to answer what printer you should buy heavily depends on your actual use case for the printer. Like I say, for small, fine detail parts, Resin is best. If you want larger parts, the detail isn't quite as important, then go with FDM. And you will save money over the course of owning a printer with FDM, as you don't need to spend as much to get a high yield from each spool. There are other ways of getting into printing, such as going second hand. In the pop-up about to appear on your screen, you'll be able to see how I fared and what I got for just £100. So guys, thanks for watching the video. Make sure to leave a comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.